Welcome to Red Eyes Creations Radio. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Henrik Palmgren and we are coming to you from Sweden, Scandinavia. On Thursdays and Sundays we are here addressing important and interesting subjects with authors, researchers and filmmakers on a wide variety of subjects. Our website is redicecreations.com. That's REDICE creations.com. There you will find news, radio, videos, links and resources, our forum, and of course our member section and much more. I'm glad you're here today. We have an important topic that we are going to focus on. We have author Mary Croft with us on the line. She is the author to a book called, and I really like this title, it's called How I Clobbered Every Bureaucratic Cash Confiscatory Agency Known to Man. And the subtitle is A Spiritual Economics Book on Money and Remembering Who You Are. We're going to talk about money and the concept of natural persons compared to artificial persons, words, law, government tricks, and much more. Mary's website is spiritualeconomicsnow.net. I suggest you head over there and do take a good look around. So it's great to have you with us online, Mary, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, and thank you.
Why don't we do like this? We could begin to talk a little bit about you for listeners who might not be familiar with you or your work. In regards to research and the work that you've been kind of doing, tell us a little bit about your background in this.
Well, you know, my background is probably similar to most of the rest of us who are doing this, and that is that we got beaten up in some way by the alleged authorities. Like somehow, somewhere along the line, something occurred in our lives and we said, hey, wait a minute. This just isn't right. There's something wrong here. We didn't know what it was, but we knew that we were not to be treated like this, whether it's anything from ridiculous traffic violations, whether it's incarceration, whether it's IRS, CRA, ATO, IR, you name it, where I don't know what your tax agency is called over there. Whether it doesn't matter what it is, we all came away from it saying, okay, there's something wrong, and that includes, you know, the banks foreclosing on your house, credit cards, collection agents ringing you and saying, you owe us this much, but you notice they'll never put it in writing. I mean, you just have a feel for it, and you say, okay, I got it. There's something wrong here. Something's going on that shouldn't be going on. And so you start investigating and you start talking to people, and I, like everybody else, started chasing the best information. And then when I had a hint of it, what I did was I started experimenting, because I contended, and still do, that the cause of every single problem on this planet, and I mean every single problem that is on this planet, is caused from the infliction of commerce by the banks onto the people. The banks have destroyed what might normally have been a decent lifestyle. And I'm not talking the past 100 years, I'm talking hundreds of years. Now that even stems back as far as the Crown and the Vatican. I don't really want to go back that far, because first of all, most of us weren't there. But for the last 75 years at least, we, by that I mean Western countries, have been operating in a state of bankruptcy. And in fact, these countries do not even have a government. We've been without a government. We've had de facto governments, but that's not real, not de jure governments. And it's all because we've been operating within a bankruptcy. And that happened in 1933 when in the States, and Canada anyway, and probably over there in Europe, you know, they did away with anything with which we could use to pay any debt. So what happened was the government, essentially, the alleged government, said, well, seeing as you can't pay your debts anymore because we've withdrawn all the gold and silver and we're in bankruptcy, but we're not telling you that, we will pay your debts for you. But what happened was, although they designed a remedy, and they just decided not to tell us because it would behoove the banks to control the people of the world by enslaving them. And what's the best way to enslave them is to enslave or steal their labor and their lives. So people started believing that they had to pay for things when in fact we don't. And then what happened is they started laboring, and the fruits of their labors, commonly known as dollars, got stolen from us because they essentially programmed us to believe that we're required to pay for things we need and want. And it simply isn't true. So we start going out trying to get better and better jobs. That's nice. And in order to get more cash, in order to pay them. But the thing is, there's two completely separate accounting systems, and we are not permitted to pay public debt with our labor, which is private. So they've kind of mixed up the two systems of accounting and enslaved us in the process. Now, there's a whole bunch of detail surrounding all that. So, I mean, you can start firing questions at me from there if you want.
Yes. I mean, there's so many areas, of course, that we can touch upon in regards to background to all of this, and of course, what you mentioned is going to be familiar with too many of our listeners in regards to at least the American, version of this, so to speak, because in many context to many researchers that are looking into these areas, they are primarily talking about what is going on in the North American Union. So what I want to ask you right away, because we have a European audience, we have many people from Australia as well as in various countries around Europe and South America as well. But in regards to, let's say, Europe then, do you know if these kinds of laws that you're talking about, either if we're talking about commerce or other law, that this is something that is applicable in Europe as well as to the United States and North America?
Yes. Nobody in the Western world is operating under any law anymore, other than the golden rule, and that is that we're not to infringe upon anybody's person rights or property. In other words, do unto others how we want to be treated, we want to treat others. So that's the only real law that there is. And everything else that we think of as laws are not laws. They're statutes, codes, rules, regulations, ordinances, bylaws, constitutions, legislations. What did I leave out? They have nothing to do with us. They are simply the policies of the corporations, which appear to be governments, but they're not. And let me use the USG as an example.
Mm-hmm.
The United States government is just a slick corporation, a foreign private belligerent corporation, which happened to be crafty enough to call itself the United States government. But it has nothing to do with what we think of as the country called the United States of America, nor is it a government. It's simply a corporation. And people actually think they're going to march to the polls and elect a president of this corporation. Well, no corporation in the history of commerce has ever had an election for their CEOs, presidents. They're all appointed. Think of Sears corporations. But anyway, getting back to your question, which is that how does this apply in Europe, for example? Well, the only law under which we all operate is actually not a law. It's a code, and it's called the Uniform Commercial Code.
Yes.
They did away with any actual laws, which probably happened somewhere in the 30s all over the world. It was 38 in the United States, and I think before that in Canada. But anyway, somewhere around there. They did away with what's called common law, and they instituted the Commercial Code. And all the Commercial Code is laws under which we operate in commerce, which happens actually to be maritime commercial law or admiralty commercial law.
Yes.
It all just has to do with banking. There is no other law. There's no criminal code. There's no nothing that applies to us. Those policies, laws, statutes, etc., apply only to the people who made them up for the corporation from which they come. So, for example, when a cop, stops you for going through a stop sign, well, show me the law. Well, there can't be a law that says that, unless I agreed to it, of course, and why would anybody do that? I'm not suggesting that people go through stop signs. I'm just using that as an example, that's a statute that doesn't apply to men and women. It applies to corporate entities and the employees of those corporations.
Yes.
So the only laws that really apply are the codes of this Uniform Commercial Code. So we're all operating in commerce, and that means then that even the courts into which some people actually believe they have to go, they're not courts of law, they're courts of commerce. So when they drag you in saying something like, well, did you murder this guy? Well, it's not about murder, it's about who has stolen whose credit and how much does who owe whom in order to balance the books.
Yes.
Simply bookkeeping. It's accounting. It has nothing to do with anything. It's not about theft. It's not about, you name it. It's about accounting and how do we balance the books. And that's what the IRS, etc., is all about, is they're there to balance the books. And in fact, they're simply not the enemy that we've always thought they were. That's a statement in itself, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, right. I know. We all hear about the IRS. In fact, just before you called, I was talking to a friend, and she's extremely concerned about, what's the IRS or the court now, because the issue's in court. What are they going to do? But I said, well, you got to remember, the IRS is only perturbed because you didn't file a tax return in order to get your tax returned to you, and now their books are out of balance, and they're blaming you because they don't have the paperwork about how you ran your commercial affairs for that year. Now, if you'll simply let them know how you did that, they'll stop chasing you, and they'll start chasing the ones who actually stole your credit. And in this particular case, the courts stole her credit. So all she has to do is name them, and the IRS will go after the judges. It's the way we want it. We're planning on putting the courts out of commission, because that system is actually contrary to what's really going on, which is we are operating in bankruptcy. Every country in the world, when it failed to pay back its debt to the IMF, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, it had to declare bankruptcy, because that's why they collected the gold and silvers, because they ran out of everything.
Is this applicable to all nations across the globe, you're saying?
Yes. Possibly not some tribes in the middle of Africa who still use wampum or whatever.
Right.
Not disparaging them. They're actually freer than we are.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Any country, and we're all working desperately on this to find the correct forms, and just in case your European listeners are wondering about what forms, I can't say this for certain, but we're beginning to think that people over there, and even Australia, New Zealand, and England, they might just have to get EINs, which are employer identification numbers, and also international tax identification numbers, known as ITINs, with the IRS, or with Social Security, because it seems, I can't say this for certain, but it seems as if the IRS is kind of the head guy as far as collection agents go. I mean, everybody's heard of the IRS. Not everybody's heard of IR or ATO or whatever. What's your tax agency called there?
They're called Skatteverket.
Good grief.
Yeah.
You mean you don't even have an alphabet agency there? I mean, it's called well, anyway. Name.
I guess it's SV for short or something. I don't know if they punch it down to letters like that, but anyway, there we go. Yep.
That's terrific. Anyway, but see, I haven't heard of that, but I'm sure you've heard of the IRS.
Yes.
So it's kind of like they're the big guys, because they truly are the best collection agent on the planet. Well, the truth is, they're supposed to be collecting for us. I know this is really, really hard to imagine. But whenever we have put our labor in the form of cash or credit card payments or debit card payments or money orders or certified checks or however it is, that's all from our labor. When we put that into the public, we're actually obstructing the bankruptcy. Because we're all acting in bankruptcy, in other words, the commercial code is based on and due to bankruptcy, we're actually in violation of public policy, and we're doing it wrong. We're not supposed to be paying anything with our labor. We're supposed to be setting off public debt with our signature, which means when somebody presents you with a bill, which, by the way, they tend not to do anymore because that is the easy way to set off public debt, they're supposed to actually, you go into a store and you buy a lawnmower